Hi everyone, it's Atuksha from Simple Crowdfunding, and in today's interview I've got the Redbanksia team that I'm very excited about, who are going to talk about their experience and actually also a project that we have on platform. Hi everyone, nice to meet you all. First of all, can I just ask you in turn to introduce yourself and just explain what you do at Redbanksia? Who wants to start?
I'm happy to
Cal, you can start. Yeah, Cal, you start.
I'm Cal Shelton, and it was myself and Sam actually started Redbanksia, and then we brought Joss and Ron in to help us build the business. And the skills that I bring to the team is finance focused and background as a chartered accountant. Sam, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Cal. So Sam Beagley, I founded the company with Cal many years ago. I'm also a chartered accountant and originally was focused on the sourcing of our sites. So for the particular investment we've currently got on the platform, in this case, I would have identified that through our system of essentially identifying the target properties. I would have then done the site visit and done the negotiation with the agent to agree a purchase price. My focus is predominantly site searching and managing the conveyancing of our sites through to purchase and or sale. Thanks. Do you want to go next, Joss?
Yeah, sure. My name is Joss Einen. I was introduced to Cal a few years ago, and having run my own property development business for about 12 years, I know that finding sites is one of the tougher things, and that's something that Cal and Sam are extremely good at and take a data-driven approach to, which I was fascinated by, so I joined up with them. And the role I play is I help Sam with the conveyancing occasionally. I check on GDVs and the value of our projects at their end date. And having done a lot of transactions over the years, I sort of get involved in various elements of the transactions at the beginning and end of the process, just to smooth out gremlins that may or may not crop up. Ron?
Thank you.
Ron Davis. So I'm from a planning and urban design background with 12 years experience in kind of private sector planning consultancy. I was representing other developers from a planning and design point of view, and joined forces with Joss and then with Sam and Cal. So I head up all planning and design related matters and coordinate the specialist input into those projects.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction, everyone. So I want to start with Redbanksia. Can you tell me a bit about Redbanksia, the expertise in terms of the types of projects you do, what are your sweet spots, and just give us a little bit of colour around the company, please.
Yeah, we started Redbanksia with the idea of going after backland plots, small development plots. So looking at corner plots, residential houses that have say a large garden or large side return, maybe space for another development. And the original conception was quite small scale, 1 or 2 units, but we're now looking at larger sites doing units of 2 to, I suppose, 9 units is pretty typical size of plot that we look at. But our niche that we operate in is backland development and residential large plots where we can add additional units. Ron, maybe do you want to come in and tell me if there's any points I've missed there?
Yeah, I suppose so the key word is intensification. So looking at existing residential areas and seeing where we can squeeze in an additional dwelling, whether that be by extension and subdivision of an existing property, or an additional dwelling on the existing plot, or demolition of the existing building and redevelopment of the plot to create more houses.
And actually, the project that's on platform is exactly that, isn't it? It's actually the subdivision and potential planning uplift of another unit as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so we've identified this as a sweet spot for Croydon. They're going through a change in the type of development that they are looking for, with an emphasis on traditional housing rather than flats. So yeah, we've identified a bungalow here that we can extend and subdivide, which is really sustainable insofar as we're keeping the existing fabric of the building, but upgrading that to create two family homes.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
If I could just chip in with just one more thing, what Ron said, and I think the key point here is that by going for intensification on existing residential land where there's an existing building, it means that by default our projects are low risk. So as an example, we've got another bungalow project elsewhere in Croydon where Ron has nearly finished the planning, where we know we're going to get subdivision and enlargement very, very similar to the Gallop. So we're just taking the same planning principles in the same borough and putting them to another site. So it's reusable. And that's why we know as a team that these are pretty low risk sites, because you can reapply the same designs and principles and policies repeatedly within the same borough.
And is that area your sweet spot, or do you focus across the UK?
Ron?
Yeah, so historically for the last 2 to 3 years, we've worked in Croydon. We are, as a team, we identified that as a borough that welcomed intensification. They did have a supplementary planning document that provided a lot of guidance to guide developers in the type of development they were looking for. Recently, we've started looking in other areas as well. So we're looking in Sevenoaks, Epsom, Tandridge, are our 3 other key areas. But yeah, we've got lots of great relationships with planning, design, highways officers in Croydon. So yeah, we're comfortable working in that borough, and we think we know what they're looking for as a council.
And Ron, that must make a really big difference, having those relationships and understanding the planning landscape, I suppose, in a specific area.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. So both Sam and I have got the number of the head of planning, and previously we've had issues with junior case officers, and we're able to just pick up the phone, get a candid discussion. Really, really useful. With
regards to Redbanksia, what makes you different? Do you have a different spin that you put on the developments that you do?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So what makes us different to other, I suppose, residential developers is our sweet spot and our primary focus is planning and architecture, and we can move a lot faster. One, because we have professional credibility and professional experience in people like Ron. We have architects that we work with regularly that we can manage at scale, so we can be quite cost effective and move quite quickly. And that's when we speak to our clients and when we're trying to source sites off market. People ask, why should we go with Redbanksia versus another developer? And ultimately, the tricky bit in all of this is the planning. Build costs, yeah, there can be unforeseen build costs. There can be unforeseen legal costs, but generally those things with the right contingency budget or whatever can be managed. What can't be managed is the nuance of residential planning. And while we have a national planning framework, every council interprets that and applies it differently. And so, as Ron mentioned, we had a significant competitive edge in Croydon, but unfortunately they have changed their policies, and we have been able to pivot very quickly because we have that dialogue, and the scheme and proposal you see on your platform is for exactly that, where they have told us, don't worry about going in for 9 flats on this plot. Historically, maybe we would have been supportive, but right now the focus is family homes, and in this case, the build, the numbers, everything works out for family homes. For other boroughs, we are building those relationships, and that's where we want to aim to have a competitive edge that makes us much different to our competitors.
Which makes a lot of sense. So having this additional insight and relationships in terms of getting projects off the ground must be incredibly important and valuable, especially in the current market conditions. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, market conditions have changed, that's for sure. We are aware, like all developers who are paying any attention, the market has slowed markedly in the last 3 months. But one thing that is clear to anyone who's at the coalface is that a lot of the price drops have already taken place. If anyone's watching Rightmove like we are, we track on a daily basis everything that goes into Rightmove in our geographic areas, in our typology. And there have been drops of 5 or 10%. That won't feed through to newspaper headlines till about May of next year. So if you imagine somebody puts in an offer now, they complete in February, it goes into the land registry statistics in about March, April, and then the Nationwide Housing Society report it to the papers next summer. That's already in. So that's been factored into our GDV already. So for example, our GDV has been reviewed 3 times since the mini budget, and that's reflected in our figures. So we're already on top of that. And I'd like to think we're ahead of the game. You know, we're not trying to pretend that nothing is going to change further, but we've got very, very up-to-date figures, and it's actually been reviewed twice in the last 3 working days, just to make sure there are no errors going on there. Talking to lenders who are obviously very, very tuned into this and to an extent determine where house prices go because of how much lending they'll do, they are sounding a lot more upbeat than they were 2 months ago. I spoke to 3 lenders in the 4 days after the mini budget, and they weren't happy guys, but they are feeling much more sanguine about things now. And as a result, we all know their rates have dropped, and we'll all just have to wait and see how the next few months go. But it's a sort of steady as she goes feeling at the moment. House transactions are going to be very thin on the ground, but house prices are probably they've already come down, the asking prices. And I suspect they're probably going to stabilize a little bit. Where we go after this is crystal ball gazing, and there's not a lot of point guessing, just making sure you've got contingencies built in, which we do in Cal's model, both in our build costs, and our GDV has a buffer. And not to mention that we've got a bigger scheme going in for planning, which we haven't even built into our main model yet, because we don't want to tempt fate. But that would give us a much larger profit.
Of course.
The extension of this as well, the area of the market we're operating in, particularly for this scheme, the price elasticity is not as volatile because we're in the middle of the market. We're in family homes. We're not looking at creating units that may have sold for $1 million plus and now they're selling for 900 or 800. You know, we're buying in the family bracket. And that is generally, if you look at historically at historical crashes or downturns in the market, those are the same brackets of the market that have been relatively stable. And as Josh said, we've baked in that 5% or so dip, and then we also have contingency and stress test all of our models. So yeah, market conditions are what they are, but we've obviously tailored our approach accordingly.
And actually, that's a good point Sam makes. I've just come off the phone with Countrywide, who probably the biggest new homes seller in the suburbs of London, and the representative there was saying, "Look, you guys are building a new family house in an area that is basically got too many flats and not enough new build family homes." He said, "You know, you're in the sweet spot, so you know, keep an eye on the market for God's sake, but you're in the best bit of the market." And if this was a block of 12 flats, then, you know, you've got to be very, very careful. But family homes are in demand, and it's unlikely to change. Let's just say that. But of course, we'll be watching the market like a hawk, as we always do.
So thank you for that. I really appreciate the insight. And I'm sure I know investors will as well. I want to talk about your project, if I may. So one of the things is, obviously, we have listed one of your projects, and this is the bungalow, which we briefly talked about. Can you just tell me a little bit more about the project? Obviously, the IM, the full information pack, is available on platform for people to be able to download and look at further details of it. But it would just be good to understand why you brought this project to the crowd. And then the other area I'm really keen to explore is looking at the numbers. You've also introduced a high, medium, low aspect in terms of cost, projected returns based upon planning. And I'd really like to sort of get into that in a bit more detail as well.
Oh, yeah, I'll kick off here and then maybe pass over to Ron. But I think there's touching on what Sam and Joss have kind of set me up really well here. We've been operating in Croydon and been operating for a number of years now, and we as they've said, we've got good line of communication with the planning department there, and the strategy that we're taking is a bit different to what we were doing when we first started operating there. So some pushback I've heard is that Croydon is overdeveloped, or there's a lot of development happening there, and how do we compare to that? Is that a concern for us? We're actually changing away from the overdevelopment, which has been flats typically, and moving towards working with the councillors who don't want flats anymore. They want new build houses, they want family houses, and that's what we're delivering. So our strategy that we're following here with this development is aligned to the council and what they want, which makes it easier for us to get planning. It's also, we've got a track record of delivering a scheme like this. So we purchased one and a similar type house and did a similar types of applications, and that's all gone through now. And so they've seen, we've got a track record now of delivering the planning, which is what Sam was saying, the biggest risk to us, or to any development that you would see at this stage. And we're supremely confident that we're going to get all the schemes that we've applied for, the high, medium, the low we've already got. We're going to get the medium very shortly, and we're very, very, very confident we're going to get the high. And so that's the reason we wanted to bring that to you, bring that to the crowd. We have the funds sitting there and we're available to, we can buy it ourselves, but we prefer to, we want to create our brand and bring in investment using your platform.
Sorry, Cal, I was going to say, just before you move on, so there's also a learning element to this, isn't there? So investors can actually learn about the whole process from start to finish, can't they?
Yeah, that's right. So you'll help us in terms of webinars, setting up webinars, and getting that information out there and creating valuable learning content. We'll also do some walkthroughs of the site. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So we want to kind of share the knowledge that we've learned and help people understand the strategy that we're employing, that we're seeing success with.
Yeah, so one of the things that has proved quite interesting is for any property development, there are always it's never a straight path, is it? There are always challenges that turn up along the way. And it's about managing those challenges, and the learning and the insight is pretty substantial at those points as well, isn't it?
I would say our key strength and who we really lean on is Ron, because all our developments, all our schemes, there's planning risk there, and he's our risk manager. He is a risk management to that. So without him, we wouldn't really have a business. And if you were trying to replicate our model, you would need a Ron. And I'd say that, that's point number one. And I mean, I'll pass Ron, give us some comments about like how you manage risk or how we get our planning.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the Gallop we're talking about today, so we've actually got 3 schemes that we've put into planning. So one of them relies on permitted development. So we've already secured both permitted development approvals for a 6-metre ground floor rear extension and for an upward extension, so adding another story and putting a similar roof back on. That's what we call our fallback position. Mm-hmm. And that gives us confidence moving forward with the 2 planning applications. So the one planning application very closely resembles what we can secure under permitted development, and we have secured under permitted development. And as part of those permitted development assessments by the council, they consider the impact on amenity, including overlooking, privacy and overshadowing, and also the impact of the design on local character. So the only question really that's left, which is in addition to the permitted development that planning officers would make looking at the planning applications for the subdivision, is it appropriate for this building to be used as a pair of semi-detached houses? So the neighbouring plot is a pair of semi-detached houses, and there are many on the street. So we feel quite confident that the answer should be yes. The other main consideration is car parking. So as part of our planning applications, we've created a second crossover from the road onto our site to create 2 car parking spaces. And in this instance, the neighbouring building on the other side, which is a bungalow, has done just that. So they've got 2 crossovers, one of which is shared with the crossover that we own. So we're very confident that the subdivision of the building will be supported. Furthermore, the PD massing, the permitted development massing, is actually larger than the massing as seen from the street when compared to the planning applications. So the planning applications have got a lower roof ridge and a hitch roof. So the impact on the character of the area is actually less and more positive when compared to the permitted development schemes which have been approved. The other change is the garage, which is currently on the boundary and actually relatively overbearing to the property to the south. We're removing that garage and having a side extension which has got a hitch roof. So we're creating separation to the boundary and reducing any sense of overbearing. So in every way, we feel that the planning application, both the kind of medium scheme, as we would call it, and the larger scheme, are both more positive in terms of their contribution to the local character and the aesthetic of the area, but also neighbouring amenity, sunlight, daylight, overlooking and overbearing, whilst making use of an existing property, using the existing fabric of the building, but upgrading that to provide 2 homes. So we're about as confident as we can be that we should secure planning for this. The kind of icing on the cake, I suppose, is there's no mature trees on the site, so we're not removing any biodiversity, and we've taken every opportunity to increase the level of planting in the front driveway area, and we'll landscape the rear gardens as well, so that there really aren't any sticking points that which should be contentious with the council.
And at what stage is the planning application for the splitting of the units into 2? What's been done and where is it at?
So there's 2 planning applications. The consultation period for both of those has finished. The case officer has been to the site and made her assessment. A local councillor has required that both applications go to planning committee. So we're keeping a close eye on that and keeping engaged with the case officer to try and push that forward. We expect to be heard at planning committee in January.
Okay, which is not long now, actually, considering holidays and all of that coming up.
But just to emphasise, the on the platform, there is a base case that required permitted development to be approved, and that has already been approved. So we know we can turn this into a large family home, and that planning risk is completely de-risked because it is already publicly available that you can see it's been approved.
Absolutely, and because for the larger schemes, because planning is not yet confirmed, the actual projected returns show that, right? So the projected returns for the project for the higher schemes are fairly substantial for a 12-month project, but then that's because there's also a planning element to it. Is that a fair assessment?
That's right. Yeah, so it's not we haven't secured it. It's not as fast as permitted development, which is typically 56 days. So because it's not locked in yet, we've given a higher return. So that was on the medium scheme, which we're confident in both schemes, but the medium scheme has a return to investors of 30%, and we expect to deliver that within 12 months. And same with the high scheme. 37%
I have to say it's projected return. So
yeah, that's right.
Based upon the numbers that have been provided. Thank you. I appreciate that. So in terms of the next steps for this project, so in terms of investors, you're looking to get more investors into this project and get people to start understanding who Redbanksia are. What are your plans moving forwards?
Yeah, I think so. We're using the platform because we want to build our brand. I mean, we're strict in planning and doing small developments, and really we want to operate in terms of our business model and the way we want to operate. We want to operate as serving our investors. We see them as our customer, and we want to be a reliable and known investment vehicle for people to come to. And from my point of view, that's where I see Redbanksia heading. But we all have our views in the team in terms of all our focuses. Obviously, I'm the finance guy, so I'm thinking about the pounds and how we're going to operate and pay for things. So I'm open up to the team if anyone else wants to jump in there.
Yeah, if I could. Oh, sorry, Sam. We've been doing planning applications and looking at various shapes and sizes of sites, although always small to modest sized residential. And what's becoming increasingly clear is that the more you specialize and focus, the more successful you get. So we are now focusing on land that already has a residential building on it and intensifying that building and possibly some of the land as well. And we've got a very good search system that was effectively set up by Sam and Cal that allows us to find more and more of these. What we want is to basically secure more of them. At the moment, we're obviously being quite cautious about what we offer on, firstly, because we want good returns, and secondly, because we want to make sure we get it in the bag successfully. But by repeatedly going for similar sites, it's increasingly reassuring and low risk for investors. So like Cal says, we want to be able to provide repetitive projects that are similar to investors that they can understand themselves, they can learn about, and they can have confidence in. We know that they're out there. We can find a lot of them if we want to. And that's what really we're building towards, I think, for the next 18 months is getting more and more of these similar plots so an investor can feel confident going, oh yeah, well, I saw one of those 8 months ago on the site and here's another one on the platform, sorry. And that's how I feel where it's going. Obviously for Ron, that's hugely beneficial because it's repetitive work of the same design type. And for the investors, we hope it's beneficial because it's similar or better returns with a similar risk profile. And with each project that goes by, there's a greater sense of reassurance in it.
And actually having a rinse repeat model is really good, isn't it? Because it allows you to potentially do more projects, but it allows investors to also then take part in property projects if they're not able to do it themselves. So everyone wins, don't they? Sam, yeah, Sam, you were going to say something.
Yeah, just reaffirming that point. The difference with a more simplistic approach to existing residential sites is that it can be applied to multiple boroughs simultaneously, and for generally the planning, like the PD, that is national planning framework level permitted development, and then the type of planning we're doing is not too complex. So it enables us to get a foothold into multiple boroughs as opposed to just one. And we still, by virtue of doing that, we may come across a more bespoke planning investment. But when you think about it this way, we have a few options here as a business. Do we have 5 or 6 projects a year where we use our own money, or we use institutional lending or whatever, or do we've now set up a system where we think we can have scores and scores of investment opportunities coming through the door and share that with investors, and what we need to do is obviously get confidence that the crowdfunding approach works, and if we know it works, then we will feel much more confident going into these like relatively vanilla purchases, knowing that we will source the funding we need to purchase the sites. So it's about building scale and rather sharing that profit with those on the platform, rather than doing less work and just sort of sharing fewer sites with ourselves, if that makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. Where do you see, and Joss, I know you alluded to this, no one has a crystal ball in terms of what's happening moving forwards. For Redbanksia, where do you see the opportunities moving forwards based upon current market conditions?
Do you want me to take this, Cal, and then I'll hand back to you? Just as a bit of an insight into what goes on inside our search system, Cal's devised a search system that basically drops new listings of the properties we're searching for and the postcodes we want into an Excel sheet on a daily basis, which cuts out hours and hours of internet faff, for want of a better phrase. They get sanity checked by Sam, who weeds out 95 to 99% of them, and then the one in every so many goes to Ron. That allows us to search at scale. And I suppose it's basically building on that and one of the useful things about that is it shows us price drops in the market taking place. So with the market changing and feeling a bit uncertain at the moment, we can see in real time the price drop that I was talking about 15 minutes ago. So you can see a development plot that you know is overpriced, go, well, it's a development plot, but it's too expensive. And then you see the same thing 7 months later, go, hold on, this thing's now come down by £120,000. It is now actually good value. Most people who've been watching it just think, well, it's a house that can't sell, so I don't really want to go and look at it. But for us, we go, well, the profit loss has now changed on that. So something that is on our list today that we're not interested in because of the metrics, next July, a few of them will still be sitting there. We'll go, well, actually now it is okay value, and what they're going to be open to an offer. Some of them are. And if you go and speak to an agent and they go, right, you guys are genuinely interested in this, and we can say, yeah, we've actually been appraising it since 6 to 9 months ago. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities there for us because the search system is pretty thorough, and it reacts very, very fast because Sam's very much on the case, and we've got a planning consultant who can basically turn something around for a very high level appraisal within about 2 to 3 hours. And then if we like it, obviously we spend a few days on it, going to town on it.
That's really, it's quite interesting because a lot of it is data driven, isn't it? And having that data intelligence is an amazing thing, isn't it? Because most things nowadays are data driven. The information is available, but being able to collate it so quickly sounds like a real gem.
Yeah, and that comes back to our competitive edge. I mean, ultimately, there's 4 of us in the team, and we all have different perspectives, and we need fresh perspectives. But the company started with 2 chartered accountants trying to take what we saw as archaic processes of someone who's walked the streets of their local borough or council and know what things are worth, and they've sort of stayed within that. What we're trying to do is to evolve and provide a more conceptual solution to sourcing low risk projects. And this is also part of the innovative approach of using the platform, which is, we've done transactions where we've raised finance privately. We've done transactions where we've raised different forms of finance through banks or bespoke lending, but ultimately the transaction costs are incredibly expensive. The arrangement fees are incredibly expensive, and there's a smarter way of doing this where we spread the risk, and obviously share the profit. So this is part of our sort of innovative approach to residential property development.
And one of the other things I absolutely love about crowdfunding is where you have really interesting developers. Often not many people know about them and what they do, and crowdfunding just elevates that presence in the market, which is a wonderful thing. So it will give you the opportunity to actually reach a much wider audience and for people to understand what you do. Cal, were you going to say something else?
I wasn't going to jump in there, but yeah, no,
that's fine.
That sounds really good. I mean, that's what you're talking about is what we're after, and we want to be more communicative with our customers and or our investors. And yeah, we're looking for your help to do that. And yeah, we'll be available to do whatever they're after in terms of educating them on our process.
Thank you.
If I could just jump in on the process of how we find sites. So we've spoken about Croydon and our history working with Croydon and relationships, and the fact that we know that this site is exactly what they're looking for. And I touched on the fact that we're looking in Epsom, Tandridge and Sevenoaks as well. So just to talk around a little bit why we're looking in those areas. So all 3 of those councils have failed to meet their housing targets. So their planning policy environment has substantially changed. They are now assessed under the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework, what's called the tilted balance, which tips the planning consideration in favour of granting planning permission. And the test is whether or not it's sustainable development. So just really to follow on exactly what Sam said, it's a rinse and repeat in terms of the planning policies that we're using, because there's much less weight on the local policies that might previously have restricted the types of intensification development that we propose. And now the main test is, does this meet the test of sustainable development as enshrined by the NPPF? And we've proved that it does, and we continue to do so. So that's why we're looking in those three areas, and that's why we feel that they're good opportunities that could be found in those areas.
Thank you, Ron. So that is the end of my questions. Is there anything else that any of you would like to share? Yes.
I'd like to ask, can I ask you something, please?
Of course.
If an investor sees an opportunity, including ours, on your platform and goes, well, I'm interested and I've read the IM, but I want to ask some of my own questions. Is there a way they can do it? Is there a way that they can get directly in touch with any of the four of us and have a 5-minute phone call and sort of pepper us with questions or ask our views on things? Because that would be a very interesting angle and quite helpful if it's possible.
Just this, thank you for asking. There's a number of ways that investors can ask more questions. They always have the opportunity. That's the first thing. So against every project on platform, so against your project, one of the tabs is actually a forum. So if people want to ask questions through the forum, they have the opportunity to do that. And what that will do is the questions that we're able to answer, so if they're very specific about the project, we'll answer those. But if it's something different, then we will put investors in touch with you. So because it just means then investors have the opportunity to address all of their questions before they actually invest in the project. And it's a really nice way also of being able to start building those relationships. So we have both. Sometimes people will just call us up, they won't use the forum, they'll call us, and then depending upon what type of question it is, we'll direct it to the right place. But we have no challenges with actually putting investors in touch with fundraisers.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Is there anything else before we end?
No.
No,
Okay.
nothing for me. That was great. Thank you.
So the only thing I will say to investors out there, all the information about the project is on the platform. The link is at the bottom of this video. And so if you go follow the link, you'll be able to go to the project. Once you're logged in, you will have access to all the information that's been provided. And as Joss asked, if you have any questions at all, get in touch with us and we will direct it to the right place. Thank you so much for your time. I very much appreciate it. And I look forward to getting this project funded with you.
Thanks.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.